You see right here.
Thank you very much, councillors. Welcome to the council meeting of the 25th of June 2020. I'd remind councillors and everybody out there that we are on Zoom. Please, if technology increases, improvement, should I say, over time, we will be a little bit challenged. Remind councillors at the far end or at the microphone down there, and you will be able to be heard. Please, councillors, could you mind standing for the council prayer? Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities in the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen. Thank you. I have no apologies if all councillors are here. I just remind councillors of the rules around conflict of interest. Are any conflicts of interest you wish to declare now? No, we can take them as the need arises later. The confirmation of order of business, we have some late items. I have the Wilson Park drainage. Further late items? The Hunterway Festival. Any further late items for staff, please? Okay. They are in the table documents. We'll move to the confirmation of minutes, starting on page 10 and looking for alterations or corrections. Thank you. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, one possible one. Just a reminder, it's not a correction to the minutes, but reminding about the voting rights at local government. So whereas today we will vote on remits as we see them, just bear in mind that there is another stage where further arguments can be put up in the local government forum. So we will take the arguments on board and position that this council will take, but it is always possible that under further evidence it could change. Thank you. 21, 22, 23, 24. Would somebody like to so move, please?
Move that the true and correct record.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilson seconding. Councillor Belsham moving. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. Moving through to my Mayor's report to Council. I'll take it as a table document and I'll give you a minute to have a look through it to refresh your memory and then take any questions. Also, the Mayor's engagements are listed. While you're doing that, I will refer to a couple of things. First of all, Emily Rayner and Lindsay Robinson have organised the thank you to essential workers this Saturday, starting from Martin Park at 8:45. And I did bring with me, and I hope the camera can pick it up at the far end of the room, just the placards where we can say thank you to those people. I've also thanked a couple of people individually, Lucy Scow, Brenna O'Neill, the work that they have done on the playground at Memorial Park and the trail right through to Centennial Park. I take my hat off to those people. To be able to look at raising in excess of $1 million is a substantial undertaking. It takes over their lives for probably the best part of a couple of years. They're not the only ones. Now, if I look in the northern part of the district, at the moment we have the walkway through to Papakai Park from Memorial Park. Probably Matt Thomas, Don Tantrum are the principals there, along with many others. But it's just amazing that we have people that do this sort of work in our community. Any questions on my report? Councillor Belsham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Fantastic that you've highlighted those people in our communities that are organising these events and projects. Absolutely endorse what you've said there. Just a typo on Emily Rayner. It's Rayner with an E-E-R. So yeah.
My apologies, Emily, if you're listening. Any further questions around my report? In that case, I'll so move, looking for a seconder for receipt. Thank you. Councillor Carter, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Moving forward to the proposed carry forwards rate resolution and the adoption of the 2020-21 annual plan. May I ask which staff member is going to lead this? Is it you? Ms. Gordon.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is in 3 sections. So if we can cover off the 3 sections one by one. The first being the carry forwards, then the adoption of the annual plan, and then the rates resolution. So just going firstly to the carry forwards, this has been done by the finance team, and you have a schedule as part of your order paper. And I just like to say, if you've got any questions now, could you put those to Ms. Devine, and she can answer those for you before we move on to the actual annual plan document.
Would somebody like to first move the receipt of the report? Thank you. Councillor Hira, and who was second? Councillor Ash. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Any questions around the carry forwards?
Yes.
Yes.
My question is regarding the public toilets painting in Hunterville. It just says reason project delayed. Is the reason for the delay?
We've been tied in with the COVID-19 and the timing. So we have had really 3 months where a lot of things were not able to be done.
Further questions? Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Just a reminder to councillors, especially to new councillors, with carry forwards, what would happen is that they would be rated for now in 2021-22. Correct?
And that follows into why we one of the issues we've noted when we get to the annual plan is we want to relook at the reserves, because we've got a legacy issue that we're actually looking through the annual plan just to look at the reserves on that basis.
Thank you. Gordon, are you happy to take a sequence as we go through almost page by page?
Do you mean with the annual plan or the carry forwards?
Well, both.
Okay.
Carry forwards, would somebody be happy to move the proposed carry forwards 1920-2021 as amended, with or without any amendments for inclusion in the annual plan? Is somebody happy to move?
I'm happy to move them as recorded in the order paper.
Councillor Belch and Councillor Wilson, you seconding, you wish to speak to the motion?
No, staff have obviously gone through this rigorously and in conjunction with the the assets team work out when these projects are going to take place, and they've been apportioned to the correct year. So I'm happy with how they're signalled in this report.
Thank you very much. By the way, I will remind councillors that now is not really the opportunity to change the work program as we go through the annual plan. This is the culmination of a series of work that council has done and a series of work around the standing committees. So this is heading to the rates resolution that we're going to face. Thank you. Back to you.
Did you write that information?
I put the resolution to the vote. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the adoption of the 2021 annual plan. You have the draft document in front of you, and we do make the note that it is a printer's proof. So there's a couple of minor amendments that will be made to it. We've already been made aware of a couple of them, so I'll run over those first and then we'll get back to the report. So minor amendments that will be included that we know of so far. So Councillor Wilson, I just had your email address slightly wrong, so that's been changed. Also, if you go to page 6, we've got a couple of corrections and I've shown them there. So under the prospective comprehensive income statement, that those last few words where they're striked out will be in that. Right, Councillor Hura?
I've got two amendments. So I've got to.
Okay, good. So because the salaries are proposed that they are not adjusted this year, that wording needed to come out. Also, as Mr. Vine alluded to before, we just had a calculation error with the carry forward, so that's been corrected to the figure as reflected in the carry forwards, which you've just discussed. And that comment about Portorino landfill, it's really because it's an operating cost, so it's not included in that carry forward. We're also going to include a footnote on the bottom of page 14, which will say that this the total cost of the project is jointly funded by NZTA, Manawatu District Council and ourselves, so that note will appear on the bottom of that page. And then as Mr. Vine has alluded to previously, the reserves, so you'll notice there's nothing on that page at the moment. Anything that goes in here actually has no rate impact, so there's no effect on the financials, it's purely a schedule of reserves. And once Jo and her team have finalised those, they'll send them out to you and they'll be put into the final annual plan document. And if you do notice any other small typos or corrections, can you provide those to me by the 7th of July? Because after this meeting, we work in-house to produce this document, so it'll go into a nicer glossy look with pictures, and Leah is doing that for me, so we have a bit of time to make some of the changes. We need to have the final plan done within 4 weeks after this meeting, so we'll meet that time frame.
Are you happy to take questions as we go? Yes. So if we go back to page 49, which is page 6 of the document you're referring to, but page 49 in the order papers, and specific group of activities, you refer to the infrastructural projects totaling 12 million. Could I just have that checked, because the carryovers is total at 17 million.
That's what we just put in here.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm working off 3 different documents here.
Yeah.
So that has been done.
That's been done, yes.
Thank you. If I run through to page 57, and again, I'm on,
Okay.
yeah. 84.6 k's of urban, 1225 kilometres. Has that just been checked? I know against the LTP.
Yeah.
This seems slightly different. Thank you. And the rest. Yes.
So that has been checked.
It has been, but for safety, I'll just go back and just make sure that the cinema goes there.
Thank you very much. Am I skipping anything from councillors, by the way, in terms of pages? Councillor Hero, your question?
Carl, what I'll do is I'm just going to follow what you put on the bottom there, Carol, and send you through an email. Thank you.
You willing to take questions further on the document? Question from me around the roading impacts. That includes Hereford Heights as part of that roading project.
In the annual plan?
So 980,000, that includes that.
That includes that, yes.
Thank you, I thought it would, but I just want to check. That takes me happy right through the revenue and financing statements. So do you wish to cover anything else off before that? Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Ash, followed by Councillor Dalgety. Councillor Ash.
Sorry, just a little bit of further clarification, if you wouldn't mind. I'd actually read that bit about the 980,000 strengthening the forestry harvest routes based on the little footnote 3 there. So I thought that it was all under the forestry. It didn't make it clear that Hereford was included in that.
Well, I've just asked for that clarification. It has been clarified by our assets manager. So I go with that. Have you evidence to suggest?
No, just maybe the footnote 3 there.
So are we looking at page 57?
We are. Number 1A, just the footnote 3 that's noted there. And so because of that, I understood that to be all under the forestry harvest routes.
I can clear that up, Your Worship, if I may. So the footnote there is a general comment on the strategy that we're taking in the district. It's not specific to all the amounts. So the amount is rolled up in a whole range of projects, as you can see with the kilometres. And the ones that are affected by forestry, we will follow that strategy that's noted in the bond. Also important to just make it clear that the Hereford Heights will come from the unsubsidised portion of the budget, which is not rolled up in the number that is presented there, but it is definitely included in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Just while you're on that, the resealing of 46k as a percentage of the net worth, I made that out to be around 17, a yearly return of like every 17 years. Is that because we're slightly ahead of the game? I think we were looking at 13, 14 years as a normal resale period.
That's a really good question. I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, so I can't really comment on them. But if they are correct, then yes, I would agree with your statement. But I don't have those details.
Okay. I think that's an information only matter. It certainly doesn't change the document in any shape or form, but it was just something of interest in that. Councillor Dalgety next. Councillor.
I'm just interested, some of these performance measures are based on the annual survey that's currently out at the moment. Is there anywhere in here where we say how many responses we get to the annual survey? So what I'm alluding to is you might not get a big response to the survey, but it still becomes your performance measure. Yeah, so I just wondered if is there any notation around that, or yeah, and what is our expectation of the survey, and what are we doing to make sure that happens?
You want me or you? So my understanding, I'll wait for staff to correct me if I get this horribly wrong. Every year we go out for an annual survey. The answers then will be collated back, and they will in fact form the basis of our long-term plan considerations and work program going forward. There may also be some part of that survey results that are in effect requests for service that should be dealt with at that time. But perhaps either the Chief Executive or Gordon wish to comment further.
It's Mr. Hodder, actually. It's his project.
Sorry.
The the annual resident survey, by definition, is done every year. And yes, we don't know until we completed the survey how many responses we get. If we get fewer than 500 out of the current survey, then what it means is the accuracy, because the simplicity of the radicals. But as is worship is alluded, it's crucial for setting the foundation for long-term plan. It is also, as you can see, it's something that gets reported on annually, folds into the annual report. So it's important we get a high response rate because we want the results to be accurate. And one of the things we'll be doing shortly is, in fact, just promoting it. We've already advertised the survey. We're putting reminders out. The survey is available for responses. So that's what we're aiming for.
So what form does those reminders take? Is that just a postal or
Sorry, can you just repeat the question? What point does?
I'm really concerned that the populace, this is a first point of engagement, and so how do we encourage our community to engage with that survey?
Do you wish?
So this time we have done things slightly different for two reasons. And the major reason is the cost. Mm-hmm. So we are trialling a different approach where we have promoted it largely on our Facebook page, our website, on our TV screens throughout our information centres, libraries and our council office, and also using the district monitor. And we also next week, as Michael has outlined, we have a flyer going into every single district monitor that's going out across the region, which does go to every household. That's 4,500, and everyone will receive that in their letterbox next week. Just a reminder saying, this is your chance to have your say. Can you please fill this in? We also have hard copies of it available. If anyone wants it, they can either ring in or we have them in the libraries or our council offices. And also tomorrow, on Saturday, at the Open Your Doors, we're going to have copies there as well as a couple of tablets for people to fill in so that we can get more people to engage. That is one of our issues. We've got such a big district, reaching everybody is one of our difficulties.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll just add that the difference in cost was considerable, tens of thousands of difference, which is what led us to this, to trial this, to make sure, to see if we could get a good return and therefore inform us of the future, in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
I just have a question with that you're on it. Worship. Sorry. Mrs. Gordon, may I ask? Thank you. So the flyers going out in the district monitor next week, I thought the survey closed on the 29th.
We've extended it.
Oh, thank you. Right.
Councillor Ash.
Sorry, just a quick question, Your Worship. On page 58, just wondering if there's meant to be a number in there in the top target, the percentage of sealed road network that is resurfaced.
Sorry, page 58.
Yeah.
It's just a mission, and that's what led me to do the calculation in terms of how many years does it take for an average road to resurface.
So there will be something.
Yes.
I think we can do that. Yeah. I calculated it every 17 years, whereas the norm is probably more like 13 or 14 years. Further questions? Otherwise, I'll move on. Councillor Duncan.
I have a question on page 90, Your Worship. I don't, just a clarification please, I don't understand in the variations from the long-term plan, the community wellbeing last paragraph now includes the additional 500,000 provision for the Portorino landfill remediation, which will be funded over the next 10 years. Can you just explain to me how that works?
Finance question.
So when we look at Portorino, and we look at our different funding streams, it's not for a waste transfer station of today. It's something that happened years ago. So it's more about the community well-being, with the river being part of the well-being to the community. So, and because we do not actually own that asset, but we are required to remediate it, it cannot be a capital item. So we recognise that as an operating cost against the well-being, but it's a multi-generational. So it's not just the well-being of the district today, it's the well-being out of a number of years. So that is why we've actually, we will fund it through rates over 10 years, not all of this year.
Further, otherwise I'll move on to, for me, page 94 of the report. So here we're talking about the revenue financing statement, and gives our rates at 23 million with a total operating revenue of 37.5 million, leaving us with a net cash position of 2.1 million, which my understanding, when we talk to you, does not include the capital position.
So
perhaps you may want to explain that a little bit further.
So what it does include is subsidies and grants that we receive for capital. So in the subsidies and grants column, the revenue, you'll see the 11 million, and you'll see the impact, for example, of the Mangawika bridge coming forward. So it recognises any revenue that we receive in the way of capital grants, but the expenditure is based on only the expenses. So capital really is reflected in two ways. The funding for capital in the future is the depreciation and amortisation. And then you've also got the revenue that would come in for the capital programs as well.
Any questions around that distinction? Because if you go to page 100.
So just to clarify one point there, is that this does not recognise any potential revenue that we could get through PGF funding.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully that's huge. If you go to page 100, we now talk about the whole of council finances, and that illustrates that when you include that capital, we're going to have a $7 million deficit. In other words, an unbalanced budget. Do we need to, should I flag that in my nearest report with an opening statement or anything?
No, because it's actually offset by so it's actually an offset.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the total of the balanced budget's got a -1.
Yeah. I've just raised it because I just want councils to be very aware of exactly where we are. So are there any questions around the whole of council prospective funding impact statement? Councillor Belsham. No, I should say as chair, for those listening in online, Councillor Belsham is also chair of finance.
So staying with page 100, I guess I don't know how to formulate a question around it, but it's certainly an observation where our increase in debt, which was signalled in the long-term plan, is significantly different. And I guess that's, well, I'll ask for the explanation around that. That's probably a better way of putting it. Thank you.
So that's reflected by the timing of the carry forwards, because as the carry forwards come between years to year, it pushes it further down the line. So
and I guess following up with that is, through the years that I've been on council, we've seen these capital projects signalled in our annual plans, and I've always seen a real struggle to actually carry out that capital program. And I guess this is showing that it's a bit of a continuation of that theme. And is there any perspective, I guess, from the assets department about, is it all of a sudden going to hit us in a bow wave where it actually does immortalise and create a huge financial impact on our district?
If I can answer that, I think we are fortunate in the sense that we are on the verge of another 10-year plan. So for the next 6 months or 8 months, we'll be planning what's going to happen over the next 3-year window and then going forwards from there onwards. So I think it's something that we control and manage, and I don't think there's going to be a big bound wave that's going to hit us. I think all of the projects that's up over the next couple of years can easily be managed in a way that it doesn't hit.
Great, all right, thanks for that.
Any further questions now? Just bear in mind that it's in the previous long-term plan at this stage, and I'm going from memory, but we should have been in debt by about 5 million at this stage. And we're currently not in a net position here. However, that's going to change. Right, I think we're in a position now, unless there are further questions, where we can start to move to adopt under Section 95 of the Local Government Act, the annual plan, with only those minor amendments. Is that how you see it? Would somebody like to so move, or would somebody like to question anything further? Councillor Belsham.
No, not a question. I'm happy to move the draft annual plan after the amendments that have been signalled.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Wilson. Do you wish to speak to it as Chair of Finance?
Other than the staff have actually done a tremendous job on getting this plan together and getting the rates impact down as low as they have. So I've got to commend staff on the work that's been put in there, because we were signalled to be well in excess of 5-6%. So I think there's been a huge amount of work put in, so thank you. And looking forward to moving into the long-term plan process, as you signalled, Mr. Bernardi, and really trying to nut out how this district is going to afford some of these projects moving forward. But no, commendation to staff on the work that's been put on this annual plan to get it to the level it is. So thank you.
So in adopting that drives us then towards the rating position, and we need to adopt the. Sorry. What is the vote? So those in favour? Aye. Those against? Thank you. We now need to adopt the rates resolution for financial year, which drives that, and they include the resolution as an appendix to the minutes of Council's meeting on 24th of June 2020. So they're in that appendix. Are there any questions around before somebody moves to adopt? No. Again, would somebody like to move the adoption of striking the rates? Thank you. Councillor Wilson, moving. Councillor Belsham.
I've got a second that is Chair of Finance. So
yeah.
Open someone's got a second.
Right. You wish to speak to it?
No, well, yes, I do actually. I'm just really going to endorse further what Councillor Belsham actually had to say. We'd all like to see zero rates and negative rates if we could, but the reality of it is we can't, and the reality of it is that we do have to push on as a district. So I'm just thankful that we've got to a point where we can actually try and push on, tackle some of these big projects that are in front of us, and tackle them openly with everybody that's around us and sit at the table to get us some points that we can move forward. So I'm happy to be there.
Any other speakers? I'll put it to vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. We now move to item 9, the adoption of fees and charges, and attachment pages 142 through to 176. A question from me. The pages that were left deliberately blank, including page 146, is there anything, and 144, is there anything that had to go into there, or it's just a facing page? It's the facing page. I thought that was the answer, but I just need to check. I'm taking questions from any of the councillors as we go through that. But it would be difficult if you were looking to make a new change.
I'm just interested, Your Worship, 147, it says there are a number of council-owned or administered facilities that set their own fees and etc. Is there any indication of what they will be doing in light of, does that come through us, or does that they just do that independently and they tell us later?
I think they tell us later. I don't think
It's really going to have a conversation.
all right. Does that answer your question?
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert.
Just on page 148, the cemetery charges, cemeteries under the administrative control of the Rangitikei District Council, does it include Huntable? Is that
That is a cemetery under our control now. Yes. It was a change that was made about 2 years ago. Just from me, in terms of, I'm just almost foreshadowing comments around park charges. The amount of money that we take in from the charges against our park, I would probably signal that as a conversation in our next LTP.
I think Councillor Lambert's point is that there's an additional amendment to this.
Okay.
Page 148.
Okay.
Wasn't currently in the report, so we need
Sorry.
to be careful with this one. That one we added
I'll
in.
second you if you're
Right.
putting it up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misinterpreted, yes. So you'd like to just see the words Huntable included as it is?
yes,
My apologies, councillor, I understand your point.
Should Awanati be in there too?
Sorry?
Should Awanati be in there too?
Yes, it should. Yes. Have we got any other I did cemetery, right. Thought you might pull me up on that. Anything further?
Your Worship,
Yes.
you made a comment around parks and reserves fees. Is that something that you want to see that conversation through our policy committee, or is that a piece of work that you want to see?
It's just foreshadowing that I'd like to see a conversation around that going into our long-term plan.
Okay.
I think the amount of money that we actually take in from those facilities is actually very low, and the community becomes a little bit of nonsense in some circumstances. For me, finally, on this section, page 157, this is the building work for which building work consent is not required. There's been quite a change in the space in the last 10 days. Has that been reflected into this document? It hasn't been. So how do we need some words to reflect that position? Or will it be updated? How does staff intend handling that?
We'll get updated in terms of the flex requirements.
All right. Okay. Anything further before we adopt the fees and charges?
Your Worship, the proposed change on page 148 is in fact not to include additional cemeteries, but to stop that sentence, which will now say charges for the cemeteries under the administrative control of the Rangitikei District Council. Stop.
Thank you. Rather than name them all separately.
Yes.
I'm fine with that. Does any councillor have an objection to that as a principle? Thank you. Would somebody then like to move that the scheduled fees and charges 2021 be amended as adopted?
Adopted as
Sorry,
amended.
adopted as amended. My apologies. Councillor Hura, Councillor Gordon, I'll come to you next, Councillor Dunn. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I'm not moving it.
I thought that might be the case. I'll put it to the vote unless the speaker. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, the oral submissions on the proposed rate postponement policy and the current rate remission policy. Please can you take us through that?
I'll just pop down my Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to speak briefly to the table document. So we didn't receive any submissions to either of the policies that were consulted on. With the rates remission policy, we are going to, or there's a few issues just around the application internally of the rates remission for subdivided properties. So there's been a recommendation included in the table document just around that, coming back to policy planning, just to clarify how that would work internally on our rates system. Are there any other questions?
Is there anything further you wish to highlight to council? Right, would somebody like to move the receipt of the report for the first instance? Councillor Gordon and Councillor Dunn. You wish to speak to it, Councillor Gordon?
No.
Vote those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Would somebody like to move a recommendation 2, that is, there were no submissions received during the recent consultation process? The rates that it be adopted.
Question.
Certainly.
Apologies. George, you surprised that there was no correspondence regarding this policy? Rate for payments? Was that a surprise? That there was no submissions or with regards?
We advertised through our normal channels, so whilst we didn't receive any and that it's surprising, we did use what we normally use. So this was done outside of level 4 as well. So I personally don't know why that would have been the case. Again, we did use our normal channels that we consult through with Facebook, District Monitor, on our website, for the libraries, hard copies available, etc.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Belsham.
Yeah, a question for George. The recommendation 6.3, where you've got some notes there, A, B, and C. Are they sort of getting back to your point about there may need to be some operational tweaks?
Yes, and that's why I said it'll come back to policy planning.
Right, so it won't be fully adopted that at this meeting without going through those.
So this will adopt the whole policy as it is, and then on, just make sure, 6.3C. So if we do get one, a subdivision application for the rates remission on that, it will just be deferred until we can organise that operational procedure. So it won't have any implications on applicants or council policy.
Okay. So just a further question to that. So the rates remissions that have been applied for, and they were signalled through our budget under an economic development area. Is that still going to continue, or are we finding another area for rates remissions under the financial, I guess, the financial display of that in our information?
My understanding of this is the putting in place the principles that we have approved as council. Is that how you see it?
So how they actually come through from a financial perspective
Yeah, that's the question.
is that it is actually, it's recognised against a decrease in rates revenue. So it's an economic incentive, but it actually, where it comes through is that we put a credit against the rates account, because that's what it is. But the policy work comes out of economic development, but it's recognised as a decrease in revenue.
So we can still see the amount of remissions that we grant in a specific like line item. If
Yes, we are able to access that, yes.
Right, yeah, that's all.
Can I just ask, is it a case of either 6.2 or 6.3 that if you went for 6.3, there'd be no need, you'd be in effect setting aside 6.2 as a recommendation, or are they both needed?
They're both needed.
Would somebody like to move either 6.2 or 6.2 and 6.3? Councillor Gordon.
Happy to move as a block, your worship.
Looking for a seconder to that, so it's live. Thank you. Councillor Blackman.
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor.
That's all right.
You wish to speak to it, Councillor Gordon?
No, I think we've sort of threshed this one out, your worship. It's pretty procedural, so I'm happy.
Right. Any speakers to this? Right, I'll put it to vote. Those in favour?
Okay.
Those against? Carried. That takes us through to deliberations on the dangerous and sanitary building policy, attachment 5, pages 177, starting. Please stand to take us through the.
It's myself
Thank you.
again, thank you, your worship. So this policy is very much so required by the Dangerous and Sanitary Building Act 2004, so it's one that we have to review every 3 years. So legislatively we're required to do that. With this policy, we did receive 3 submissions during public consultation. One of them, which had no detail, it was just a couple of photos. We don't even have an address to track down and talk to that person around the issues that they may have. Unfortunately, the other 2, the first one being that the person was, the submitter wanted us to take into consideration that if emergency works need to be done, that we find the cheapest option available. So I've had a chat to our environmental team, and they said in the instance that it's an emergency, we would get the first available person. Second off, if it wasn't a direct emergency, then we would go to an approved contractor through that process. Thirdly, with the other submitter from Fire Emergency New Zealand, they just proposed a couple of little amendments under section, I'm not sure I get it right, sorry, under section 2.4.3, just including the last 2 bullet points of life safety features are inoperative and activity within the building compromises the safety of other users. Other than that, there are no amendments to the policy that we consulted on. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, just from me in terms of the photograph, you haven't been able to identify the building.
Not personally, no.
I think probably Councillor Lambert and I may will know where that building is, along with Councillor Dalgetty, so maybe we have a conversation with you later. And presumably it's been put in as a submission to illustrate a concern of the community.
Yes.
Would that be fair comment, Councillor, if I'm correct? Thank you. Would somebody like to move recommendations 1 and 2 so we have something to speak to? Councillor Duncan's question.
Sorry, I just can I ask also, can I just ask with that 3rd submission, is it I didn't see where we had or had not sorry, I should have looked a bit closer, where we've adopted those recommendations or not. We obviously don't have to. But
no, you do not have to.
do not have to?
No, if you didn't want to. They are.
They're in there.
Yes, they are in there at the moment. So that would be the with or without amendments.
Sorry, can you tell me what page that
I'll just get it from here, sorry. It was section 2.4.3, which is page 184. 84 of the order paper.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Belsham, question?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I've got a question around that same thing in the submission. Life safety features as detailed on building compliance schedule and operative. Would that not come up under a BWAF inspection, building WAF inspection?
Yes, the purpose under here is to provide some examples.
Yeah, okay. So if action needed to be taken, it could be taken under a BWAF inspection rather than an sanitary building policy.
I'm not 100% on how those work through the building team, so
I just wonder whether we're doubling up on what, or confusing what action will be taken if one of these things was signalled under an inspection process.
But bearing in mind that many of the buildings that would be subject to this action would not be undergoing a fitness. Are you thinking purely in terms of commercial buildings?
Yeah.
Because there would be a number of private residences that could fall into this category as well.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, so that 2.4.3, as it reads, is the considerations as to dangerous assessment where a building is either occupied or not may include. So that could classify. It's just more so that if the public is reading this and they see life safety features detailed on building compliance and operative, then they're gonna know that as a building owner. So an example might be your fire, what are they called? Fire sprinklers. Yeah, sorry.
Or a ladder, escape ladder or something like that.
Yes.
Right. Okay, I just want to need that clarified.
A question from me. This features really about dangerous and sanitary buildings as a policy. But what is the fallback position or position regarding, for instance, vermin? So if for instance, I have a neighbour complain about infestation of rats that may or may not have come out of the building or have come out of even an unoccupied section, the unoccupied section can't be dealt with under this policy, can it?
I would have to check on that, sorry. I'll get back to you.
Because of it, if it can't be dealt with it as because the policy is around dangerous and sanitary buildings, and we have, for instance, a major vermin problem on an unoccupied section or a section without a house on it. Under what policy or act can we get any form of control?
I would have to check with Johan's team on the environmental and regulatory side of that.
Sorry?
I would assess the public health issue.
So be under public health legislation. Public Health Act, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I really just wanted to highlight that that's where some of the concerns potentially can come from. And what we have. Would somebody like to move recommendations 1 and 2 as a block? There are no further questions. Councillor Gordon, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Gordon, do you wish to speak to that?
No, Your Worship. The fact that we've had some submissions that have highlighted a few minor things that needed tweaking is positive, and so I think we should go ahead and adopt.
Well, when you're saying tweaking, are you now saying with amendment?
Correct.
Have you got a good steer on where that needs to go? Because if you're amending something, you need probably some description as to exactly what you're amending.
Well, that included the submissions from FENS and the other 2 submissions. Where are they? They've been included. I'm assuming they're included in the
Yes.
policy. Including amendments.
So be without further amendment.
Sorry.
Yeah, as amendment. Anything further? Any other speakers? Otherwise, I'll put it to the vote. Put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Was that a question, Councillor Dunn?
Just a
Zoom.
East Coast.
yeah.
I think everybody's weary of Zoom. We're all on here. Item number 12, LGNZ 2020 Annual General Meeting remits. Attachment 6, pages 192 through to 239. Perhaps we could move to tidy up one. First of all, a recommendation around registration of delegates. Principal person should be the mayor, so there'd be that His Worship the Mayor. Is there anybody else at this stage that wishes to attend and be registered as a delegate? So the vote would, we can seek changes later, by the way, and if, for instance, we were not able to attend, there is a process in where we can have our votes put by another authority. Do I need another second name? So I can go to the Chief Executive who will be attended. And the Chief Executive. I'll move that, looking for a second to two. Thank you. Councillor Ash, I haven't got to you yet, so I'll put you in there. Is that what you're wanting with your hand up?
No,
no.
Oh yes, I'll take that as well. I did have a question, but it's not.
I'll take both. I'll take
You'll
the
take
second
both.
and a question. If you like.
So with our three votes, just wondering with the remits today, that what we agree on as a council will all three votes will go that direction at the AGM. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can't. So the number of votes that you have is dependent on the size of your the authority. So obviously Auckland Council, Wellington Council, Christchurch dominate the voting because of the sheer weight of votes that they hold. So you can't split them up. However, I did make the point earlier with remits. So when it comes to the vote, the person moving has a right to speak, and there are other people that can speak for or against the remit that's been put up. In exactly the same way as a councillor can come along to council, and you may think that you're going to vote one way, and then having listened to the arguments, you think, actually, I've misunderstood this, or this wasn't quite the intention that has been put across. So there is always a possibility of those people voting potentially against the direction of council. It's not something that I would ever look to do. I would, unless there was some very major reason. But that's the whole process of remits, where they are absolutely thrashed out and discussed. I can't think of any occasion where I have said council wanted this and I want something different. Right, we now need to go through the remits. It may take a little while. Right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. We now need to go through the remits. I'm hoping that we can do this reasonably quickly. So, first remit was on public transport, proposed by Wellington Council. I am presuming, councillors, that you have read the document and have a view. Is there anybody not in support of that remit? Right. So that one, our support would be go with it. Yes.
Sorry, can I raise something with it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not terribly applicable to our district. Totally in support of it, but wondering whether or not you'd be able to speak to it there to highlight the transport poverty that we do actually have within the district.
Yeah, if you wish me to be one of the speakers, and remember there's a limited number of speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So if it is just to make a sort of general political statement rather than referring to the remit, I just advise caution because it takes up somebody else's potential space.
Mm-hmm.
You did right. This tends to be a remit that's directed via the major authorities because of their transport links. But I'm quite happy to get the opportunity to flag there are areas of regional New Zealand that does not have sufficient transport. And that's your point. I'm quite happy to make that point. I really make a note. That's fine. Page 197, housing affordability. Does anybody have a strong view on that? I'm presuming that we'd be voting in favour.
Correct.
203, returning GST on rates to spend on infrastructure.
Yes.
Your Worship, we need, I support this because we need to drive the point home to central government that we need another mechanism to raise funds for the sector, and rating is such a blunt tool. I know this relies on rating because it's the GST on rates, but honestly, we've got this tidal wave of old infrastructure coming at us.
This GST on rates is often referred to as a tax on a tax. And LGNZ and local government have argued this for years. We've never had traction with government, but this is probably a case of one where we keep hammering away.
Yeah. I don't know whether we've got a snowball's chance of winning, Your Worship, but I mean, we've just got to keep on chipping away.
So 203, we're in favour.
Yes. Right.
Page 204, natural hazards. It's 204. 205, sorry.
Yeah.
Do we have a view there? Councillor Duncan.
I have a concern about this one because it talks about a whole of regional councils, central government, territorial authorities all working together and having one rule. So that's what I took from that. Having basically nationwide policy, and my experience with what's happening in the Rangitikei with the water group, which I can't Rangitikei Regional Catchment Group, is that the experts have spoken to that, say particularly for Rangitikei we need a regional approach, and I wonder if this goes across into this sort of remit.
The way that I looked at this one when I read it was around saying that you really needed a strategy. I wasn't sure whether that strategy was a national strategy or whether it was a local strategy or regional one. Maybe I didn't spend enough time on it. So, for instance, the Ministry of Environment recently published a case study on challenges with implementing the Hawke's Bay coastal strategy. And I suppose the argument then is that there should be a national perspective. So I'll take your point. Councillor Belsham.
Thank you, Worship. I'm thinking about out at Kuitiata and the issues we had with erosion of sand dunes in towards our part of our district and the ratepayers' land out there. And I remember we had issues with who pays. Is Horizons, is that Horizons' responsibility? Is it us as a territorial authority that are responsible for it? So I can see this remit going some way to trying to come up with some sort of, I guess, idea out of it as to who pays. That's going to bring about discussion, and if it can be uniform throughout the country, I think it makes sense. It'll come up with a conclusion that says this is your responsibility, or no, it's not. Because at the moment, I think it's almost like a Queen's chain. We're in no man's land as to who's responsible for looking after that. So I believe that at least this will start a conversation about whose responsibility it actually is. That's how I understood it, and so I'd be supportive of it for that reason.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Worship. There's also the issue of even notifying people. Now, it's not explicit in here. We just have to think back to what happened 2 years ago down in Rangitikei when a dotted line was put on their district plan map and everybody with an expensive house kicked up because they didn't want effectively the value of their asset to go down. But if this is done on a national level, then it takes some of the pressure out of the local stuff. We've experienced this ourselves. We need to have a national approach to some of these issues that become very political and very difficult locally. We all lose, in the long term if we turn a blind eye to this. So I support the agreement.
My only hesitation around this is if you look at where the major effect in New Zealand is going to be, take Dunedin, possibly like a third, a quarter of Dunedin is going to be inundated with water. So huge financial hit. Equally, parts of Thames, Wellington, Auckland, they're really big populations with enormous costs that are going to be paid. And I'm just a little wee bit weary around whether the country is then faced with picking up. So conceivably you could have Central North Island Hill Country stations who are levied a charge against the national strategy. So whatever, if there is a national strategy, that's presumably our time to submit and say, excuse me, to the Crown, because it would be a legislative change. So that's the opportunity. That you see where my hesitation is? I do agree that we actually need a line in the sand to say who is responsible. So I'd be prepared to support the remit, but I'd probably be arguing quite strongly in the chambers in Parliament around if there was a national position as to who was liable for the costs of. Is there anybody that would not support that remit?
You will. This does mention all natural hazards. It's not just about natural treated beaches. So our hill country stations could be suffering from other natural hazard, maybe drought, excessive rainfall, whatever. It's a full gamut.
Yeah.
As I said.
Yeah. Sometimes it's about horsepower that's sitting in
I know.
Mr. Hodder, do you sort of agree with my comments that there'll be a major discussion as a legislator? Councillor Duncan says.
Oh, sorry, just an answer to that, to further that, it really is quite specific about coastlines, though, is it not?
Yes,
Yeah, my warning is where this goes.
Along New Zealand's coastlines, quote, coordinates development of the coastline strategy for the whole of New Zealand.
The next one, page 208, annual regional balance of transfers. This was supported by our council to get it to a remit state. So this is really saying where's the GDP generated in New Zealand and the GST associated with that, and does it all go to Auckland? If I'm perfectly blunt. Is anybody not in support of that remit? Right. The next one, Sorry,
just a query. So essentially what this remit's asking is the funding sources that go back into districts. Is that what you're looking at weighing it up against?
That could be the second stage of it. This is saying we actually need to understand the balance sheet.
Because it's really interesting. There was that mechanism to do just that not so many years ago. You could see exactly how much was being funded back into the district. I was talking to our MP a couple of weeks ago about that not being available anymore.
Yeah. That's it. You're right in the right space. Next one, so that's a yes. Next one is this is the 3 to 4 year, a change from a 3 to 4 year electoral cycle. As happens elsewhere, the arguments are that you come in as a new councillor, year 1, all you're doing is learning. Year 2, you're starting to make gains, and then that year 3, and not so much in this council might set that. So year 3, you're then very nervous about re-election, so you don't want to raise it. So Australia, I think, went to a 4-year cycle. What's your view? Yes. Yes. Councillor.
I'm really 50-50 on this one. It has got a bullet point here somewhere that says if the council does get out of control, you can step in like it can be stopped, which is the only thing I'd like. As long as that's in there, I'll support it. That's my only fear.
Councillor Lambert, the process for stopping a council is incredibly difficult. For a fractured council, my guess is it would take you at least 18 months to go from peaceful position that is fractured to be able to even start looking at any resolution to that. For instance, the powers to remove the mayor are virtually non-existent.
No,
sorry,
Need to change that.
it's a reality. And this council has been through that process. You look at even places like Cyprus, a long time, and then the council sat in place and commissioners were brought in. But for government to dissolve the council inside 4 years would be very, very difficult. They take their powers away.
Yes, Your Worship, I support this this remit, and I would hope that it would lead to a wider question that we should be on a 4-year national cycle as well.
Right, we'll go around the room. We'll go around this way. Councillor Hero,
yes, I agree that it should. Well, I think that it should be in a 4-year cycle, mainly for exactly what you've said. The first year is really about learning. Well, quite frankly, I've been in here for 8 months and it still feels like in a lot of ways I've just stepped through the door. So I think that it's to me it's a waste of resource of people. So I had the opportunity to sit around with a number of councillors, some that have been in for 1 term, some that have been in for quite a long term. And so I think that the resource and the knowledge that a person picks up in a 3-year period, you're not, in my head, you're not actually going to really make a good impact into anything if you're scared off from it, quite frankly. And I think an extra year really gives the person a much wider scope of what they can affect. Yeah. So I agree that it should be.
Councillor Belcher.
Yeah, I'm in support of this remit, and it's based around one of the comments in the remit here in the order paper around the long-term plan process. And you come on as a councillor for a 3-year term, you may not see what your vision was actually enacted during your term if you're only on for that first term. So I think with a 4-year cycle, it gives you an opportunity to get something put into a long-term plan and actually implemented while you're in the elected space. So I think it's got some real positives from that aspect. Yes, there are some negatives, but I'm pretty sure if it was put into place that if there was some really disruptive councils, there will be some sort of legislation that can deal with it through an administrative process. So I'm in support for that reason.
I'm going around the room this way. I have to come back to Councillor Dunn. Councillor Diabetic, you spoke.
I agree with Councillor, previous councillors.
Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I agree. Stability definitely will come from that longer period of time.
Councillor Ash.
No,
You're gonna
totally.
have the contrary view.
Yeah, totally don't support this. I think I'm terribly risk averse, and I do tend to err on the side of caution. I think allowing a potentially disruptive council to stay in another year could spell disaster. If they're good, they'll get re-elected back in for a further 3 years, and it's up to each councillor to ensure that they're worth their salt when they're around the table. As far as whether or not they see any projects going through to fruition, if they want to see them through to fruition and they're a good councillor, comes back to my comment of better be good, they'll get re-elected back in and be able to see their project through to fruition. I think it needs to stay at 3 years. I hear your comment about people start to get a bit cautious around voting time. I think that's...
I did temper it by saying I don't see a lot of evidence in this.
No. But I do hear what you're saying and have seen it elsewhere. So yeah, no, I'm not in support of this at all.
But it is a reality. Councillor Gordon and Councillor Dunn.
The question I'd have, if this got changed, is would we be changing our financial and planning cycles accordingly? Because we work on 3-year funding blocks at the moment, and which is both good and bad because the new incoming council gets to essentially decide what they want to achieve in the next 3 years, and then they do it, and then the next incoming council has another shot. If we did 4, we'd effectively, without any change, we'd have an overlap, and then your incoming council would actually already have a set of plans that have been put in place by the previous council. Now, I can see benefits on both sides. I'm pretty even.
Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, I think I'm in support of extending it again. I think, last year when I was last term, yeah, you do for the first at least 2 years. You're just learning. You know, it'd be good to have the other 2 years to absolutely implement what you want.
I think people underestimate the learning that is required when you go into local government in any level. And yeah, it's just, it starts off with a whole series of acronyms, and you've got to be brave enough to say, actually stop the bus, I need to understand. And it's hard. Look, I'll show of hands, those in favour of the remit. Right, the remit's going. Two 215. Water bottling. Councillor Ash, you want to start with that?
Definitely in support of it.
Is there anybody that's not in support of this? Yes, I'm sure you can. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. On page 217, I don't know whether anyone knows any background to this, but at the top it says, under the Overseas Investment Act, foreign investment in New Zealand's water cannot be managed effectively as water is not defined as a sensitive asset. And I would have thought that going forward, that would have to be something that changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just couldn't believe I read that. That just seems extraordinary to me.
But when you read the report and read the quantity that has been approved by consent
Mm.
that is not uplifted, that's just incredible. There's only a small proportion of it really toward that's consented that's actually exported the way it is. The projections have much more.
Can I get further to that, though? It does say that that is why this remit has been brought forward, is because of the potential for water banking.
Yeah.
So, which is even scarier.
Yeah, totally agree. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, but nowhere in here does it mention a fee either. I mean, I know this is a really thorny thing for central government to deal with, but effectively we give away this golden asset. We don't charge a single cent. People can actually make a small fortune out of it if they choose to. So I think possibly in the discussion, if we support this, then we should actually raise that issue of water charge.
All right, so we're in favour of the remit. Page 221, regarding the quorum on meetings. I suspect we might have a bit of divergence in the room on this. Who wishes to give their opinion? You want to do this just simply by vote? Would that be faster? Or do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Duncan, you wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. Once again, I'd just like to say that in the climate of COVID, for instance, in a pandemic situation, it's really important that we had this, but otherwise I would be in favour of it being a normal quorum that sits in our case in the room, rather than, because they're two different situations, aren't they? Under two different government, well, the governmental rules actually did not allow us to meet, whereas in a normal situation I would hope that we would have to have a normal quorum that sits in the room.
I mean, to my mind, it goes a little bit further, but I'll come back to that. Councillor Gordon, Councillor Ash, Councillor Gordon.
Yes, I fully support actually having electronic mechanisms available to us. I suppose if we took it to the ludicrous degree and everybody didn't bother to leave home and we had an empty room here, that would probably be a little bit dysfunctional, but I think there needs to be that flexibility within the system. Just how you govern that, perhaps the mayor should be given powers to grant leave of absence or some words around that. But we need, I think the COVID thing brought it home. We actually had to wait for central government to pass a law to amend the Local Government Act so that we could function. I mean, how crazy was that? So I think we need this flexibility.
That's it.
I couldn't agree more. I do think just life in general occasionally means people aren't able to attend in person to a meeting, and I think being able to zoom in, as it were, just makes that ability easier when necessary, whether or not needs to have a framework around that. Under what circumstances you can do that, but having that ability, I think, is really, really powerful.
I'm going to speak against it. And the reason I'm speaking against it, I bear in mind a situation that happened not too far from this council. It wasn't at this council, but it was a neighbouring council. So they had a councillor elected very, very early in their term. They moved to Australia. And normal logic would have said, you resign. He didn't. He would skip one meeting, he would skip the next meeting, and the third meeting, it was lucrative from travel across the Tasman to be in attendance so that he could still be paid as a councillor. And so I'm wary about how easy it is to misuse the principles that you're in favour of as councillors. But I'm also wary that I think the decision-making process with councillors in the room is an easier decision-making process in terms of debate. That's just my personal view, but that's my wariness about supporting Marina. Take some more feedback, Councillor Belsham.
Thank you, Worship. Agree with your sentiments, but in saying that, I think there are circumstances, as Councillor Ash has pointed out, where people cannot attend in person. And if it came down to the mayor making that decision, whether that person could attend by remote technology, I can't see an issue with that. If someone was abusing it, then it's up to the mayor to make that call and say, look, I'm sorry, but you cannot attend this meeting by electronic means because you're making a habit of it. So, but I think to have that ability to be able to join a meeting if you're overseas for whatever reason, and it's a one-off case, then I don't see any concern for that. And I think that could be put into legislation. So yeah, I'd be supportive of it under those circumstances.
And I certainly take that on board. That there may well be opportunities where you think, for instance, the mayor would say, absolutely, that makes sense. I'm just aware of some past history. Right. Those who support the remit going forward, remember it's up for discussion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The remit is carried. Thank you. 225, the use of macrons, page 225. Is anybody not in favour of this? Right. We'll take it as carried. Page 228, rates rebate low income property owners. We supported this. This is in essence a lift in the government rebate scheme. Is there anybody not in support? Right, big tick there as well. 232, local government costs on CO2 emissions. This is one where the Deputy Mayor and I were hesitant about supporting. Did we have a view in the room? So we were asked whether we would support remits. We were delegated by the council. And so we were asked to support this moving forward to a remit stage. And we said this was one that we weren't sure about.
I'll give it a speak.
Yeah.
While I'm for lowering CO2 emissions, I'm certainly not that way inclined where I want to drive my V8 car around and pollute the atmosphere completely. The reasons for not supporting this remit was based around having to legislated to have to report these to central government, and to my mind, that is just going to create another huge cost on the ratepayer. And at this present point in time, we're trying to reduce the compliance costs to ratepayers. And to me, I think as a central government, this country is doing its thing across the country, and then to legislate local government to go and report again to central government, I think is a complete waste of tax ratepayers' resources. So that was my reason for not supporting this agreement, and I'm sure Councillor Ash is going to have okay. But anyway, that's my view.
We'll go Councillor Ash.
I really didn't think I'd have to speak to this at all. I thought everybody would be in agreement. It's a bit of a no-brainer. To me, as long as the framework is made easy and made simple, so it's not a heavy workload, measuring everything is so important. If we're not measuring and don't know what we're creating, what we're causing, etc., we've got no targets to work towards and nothing to measure ourselves against, nothing to work towards. And we should be measuring everything. So measuring our emissions, I think, is and having that reported and having something to work towards, to me, is an absolute no-brainer towards better environment outcomes. And I totally support this remit. There are simple ways of ensuring that we know how to get those numbers, measure those numbers without it becoming a heavy workload.
I'm going to speak against this, and it's based purely around the cost of compliance. So, for instance, you have a station at the back of Tri Happy that is putting in a crop, and they have a very large horsepower tractor there, and they are tying tandem discs and a roller and everything else. They will put out their emission profile, and the inspector rolls up and will drop the roll and drop the discs off, and they think we're going to measure that tractor, and he just runs across the paddock there. It becomes a lunacy, and it's so hard to measure, and we'll end up in a state where we are employing a huge number of staff, and we have nonsensible results. I understand if it was limited to industry, I would get that. But there doesn't seem to be any limitation around this. That's my hesitation. Councillor Gordon.
It's district.
This is measuring everything.
No, it's everything. But there is measured.
Instead of a private conversation, can we have one that's in the public arena, please? Councillor Gordon, you're speaking right.
My initial reading of this was that this was around measuring us as a council entity as opposed to the district we administer. But if I'm completely wrong in that, someone please tell me quickly.
Well, my reading of it wasn't that. It wasn't about
Okay.
council's emissions, it was about all emissions
Right.
within the district.
I would have, if I may, Your Worship, if it's around measuring district council processes and planning, given that we put in place infrastructure assets that have such long lives, that a decision we make today will influence its carbon emissions for the next 100 years in some cases, if we look at underground assets. And so possibly there does need to be some metric to measure our long-term performance or long-term efficiency or ability to affect that. But if we haven't even got a metric made up to do that, then perhaps this remit should be aimed at that, and at least getting some across the board agreed mechanism. That's the start. We've got to start somewhere. But I mean, if this remit is about inspecting us to employ people to go out and measure how much the big tractor on the back of Namatea or Angus Gordon's property or anyone else's emits, that's a bit of a nonsense.
Which is my point. If they'd limited it to industry, I would have supported personally. I think we're starting to go around the room up here, but perhaps a show of hands who would want to support the remit. I thought you might. That remit fails. I think it is, Councillor Ash, I think it is something that they need to refine.
Yeah.
But the models are already there, Your Worship, and maybe I was having a little bit of faith in people's transparency.
Yeah. Your Worship, but it's up to the person putting that forward.
On this particular remit, would you be prepared to argue that if they did a metric that just measured district TA performance, that might be something that we could get there with?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay,
And
thank
as I
you.
said, really, you've got to be wary of taking the limited number of speaking opportunities there are in the room. Yeah, I have seen one or two years in the past try and dominate the room and speak to everything.
Yeah.
The mayor of the
He's probably watching.
I can understand your point of view on speaking rights and so on, but I think, yeah, I probably, if it was a little bit more, that remit was a little bit more pinned down, I would have voted the other way. So I think they kind of need to know that. So they can represent it in another manner, they'll get a far better audience.
All right. I think we.
One more question.
Yes, sorry, Councillor.
It's not really a question, but just to say, if I decide and I have the opportunity to put my hand up or not put my hand up, it doesn't make my opinion not be transparent. So I don't appreciate that comment. The comment that was made by Councillor Ash. So that's all I have to say.
Do you wish that to be recorded?
Yes, I do wish that to be recorded.
Okay.
You better clarify.
Sorry, can I just? Am I able to respond to them?
If you're responding around your intention, but I'd just be careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely around my intention. Absolutely around my intention. Wasn't directed at council or councillors at all. It was more in response to information that might be coming from people that are driving their tractors and then dropping their rollers or having different measurements. So it wasn't directed at transparency.
Leave it there, Councillor. I don't want to get into a debate around this. It's not really. Thank you. That takes us through to the end of remits. So we have a summary that we support remits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there was one we didn't support, which was remit 11. And Mike Taylor say, include in that minute, that we do not support remit 11. Would somebody like to move in that direction? The reports, Councillor Bolsham moving, Councillor Duncan seconding. Vote those in favour, those against. Carried. Item number 13, this is an open letter to mayors and chief executives. Information, I regard it as information really only. I think that probably the best thing though is just to move a receipt of it into our system. I'm happy to do that from the chair. Could be somebody that seconds it. Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Dalgety. I think that's fine. Just a little read of it. Does anybody wish to discover it, to talk about it? Sorry. Thank you. Another
Sorry, this is the entertainment.
Yes, it is.
I have, which I think I forwarded, did have a personal approach from our locals saying that the problems that they're looking and asking for support, which I believe was forwarded to the council. And just to say that they are back up and running, but this is going to be, just saying that this is exactly what we, on a very small scale, are experiencing. So it really is happening out there in the community.
So you're not looking for a recommendation to that?
Guide me.
Right, I'll put it to the vote. The receipt of this letter, those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you. Item 14, the proposed extension of council's management contract for waste transfer station for attachment 8, pages 243 through to 246. Would somebody like to move a receipt? Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Councillor Carter, those in favour and those against, carried. I know, would like to speak to it?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I'll start with this one on the first page, where it makes mention of the fact that council has a range of issues on the waste collection side that we need to work through over the next couple of years. The first one is a review of our waste management and minimisation plan that needs to happen, and it needs to be consulted publicly. The second one is to revisit our solid waste and recycling levels of service and consider the introduction of curbside refuge removal. So you'll remember about 18 months we did consider that, but there was quite a change in the recycling arena, and that was put on ice for a couple of years. And then the third big issue there is that we need to conduct a Section 17A on the procurement of the service. So those are the three big factors that we have to consider. So to allow time for us to consider these factors above, it is considered prudent to continue with the current level of service and with the current service provider to maintain continuity throughout that review period. So it'll make more sense, in other words, to stick to the same service provider for the next 2 years and not to overcomplicate those three things that we have to do anyway. We have gone back to the existing service provider and we got a price from them if they would supply the service for us until the end of June or 30th of June 2022. And they came back and said they would extend the contract at a cost of $170,341 per year, over and above what they charge us at the moment. It is noted in the report that this is unbudgeted, the extra amount, which is not quite correct. There has been an increase in the existing budget of about $96,000 as it stands, which leaves us with an additional $74,000 per annum that we'd have to make up. And what we're proposing for that is we have challenged our staff to come back to us with savings proposals for council and efficiencies. And the target that we've proposed to them is $150,000 per year. And costs like these could easily be rolled up in those savings. So the proposal or the recommendations of the report, I might just step through the procurement policy and why we brought this to council. Normally, under the council's procurement policy, anything over $250,000 needs to be tendered, and that's for the life of the contract. Obviously, this is $170,000, but if you take it over the life of the extension, which is up to the 30th of June 2022, it will exceed that number. Although the procurement policy does allow us to extend the contract of an existing service provider, which is the case in this situation, but that obviously would have to be approved by council, and hence why we put it in front of you today. And the recommendations, you can have a look at those. And if you've got any questions on those, you have to answer.
Chief Executive, do you want to say this?
Thank you, Your Worship. To support Arno and that, I think it's fair that elected members may look at this number at 170,000 and question why this wasn't retendered. I think it's a valid question. I look at the reasons that I considered with my team about the retendering and the workload of the team during that time. I consider that alongside the issues raised in 1.2 as challenges that we needed to consider in the next 2-year period. And it was my decision to not retender, but instead to go to the proposal that you see in front of us. I reiterate what Arno has said regarding the particular wording used that said this is unbudgeted. The wording there should read this is $170,000 more than the last contract. And Arno has positioned us that the cost to council will be neutral with a combination of factors that he outlined.
Take questions. Councillor Belsham, Councillor Ash, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Belsham, yes.
Thank you, Risha. Yeah, so it's shockingly the increase in per annum charge from what they had been charging. But the thing that stands out for me is that this contract expired back in November 2019, and I would have had the expectation that that would have been dealt with prior to the expiry date of this contract. And so now we're over a bit of a barrel, really, with the contractor. That's my feeling towards it. Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the processes, about how we deal with when tenders, when contracts expire and when they're actually dealt with. I'd like to know some information around the processes around that to ensure that this this doesn't happen again, because this has actually put us in a bit of a predicament.
Councillor Ash.
So yeah, I've got a few thoughts around it. My first one was in the document. It said about them needing to make investments, further investments into their business. Can't remember what the exact wording was. Is that something that we're picking up in its entirety with this 170 plus GST per annum? What happens if we don't agree to that extent, that further amount? And if there's a $96,000 sitting there in the budget, what are we potentially missing out on that we could have been spending that money on? I wasn't going into that.
Yeah, so you've asked a couple of questions there. My understanding, if we didn't agree to this funding, we wouldn't have an operation. It would be, the operation would cease at the end of June.
I'm not sure exactly when it comes in. So we've negotiated a rollover from November, and I'm not sure when that comes in.
But effectively, if we didn't follow through, what you're saying is we don't have an operation.
Yeah.
The second part of your question around what other money would be foregone in terms of cost saving, was that it?
Yeah, so what else are we missing out on, and what, like the other money that we've got to spend, plus the 96,000 that we've got in the budget, what could that have been spent on? Might almost be a moot point if we have to go ahead with this. Is it something we can do in-house? I guess is the other question.
Thanks.
So when we discussed the budget at last in May, and some of the pressure that we're facing with the rates increase, there's a number of areas within council that we actually want to target to reduce our costs on. I mean, some of them is the printing. We've already talked about our vehicles, and we've targeted to our staff to achieve a savings of 150,000 without reducing the level of service. And while we're targeting this, so that's the level of service to the ratepayers of the Rangitikei. So it's us being smarter about how we deliver. And we're using that funding because we will have price increases, we will suit, and we're trying not to, and that is so we don't have to pass it on. So this is exactly why we set up that fund. When we do get price increases, we're looking at other ways where we can actually reduce our cost of funding. And that's what we're doing with this one.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, who, for those online, Councillor Wilson is also Chair of Assets.
Thank you, Worship. I've got multiple questions here. So if we read the report, one of the things about the report for a start is it's been presented from Hamish Ward, General Manager of Infrastructure, which is a part of our shared division. I would have thought that he would have been here to speak to this report because this is a reasonably significant variation. So my concern is the date of the completion of the contract was the 30th of November 2019, already been picked up by Councillor Belsham. So what have we been operating under from then until now? So that's question number one. Question number two is the proposal says that the contract is to start on the 30th of June. That's 5 days from now. So did this contract have a rollover agreement in it? If it did, why weren't we discussing it back in November? And right here and right now, we have no other option apart from to let the rubbish build up at our back door. That's the reality of it. And there's a figure literally being plucked up out of the air by this contractor here, who may or may not be doing a fantastic job. I don't question the service that the contractor's provided, but I question how we have found ourselves in this position that we really, right here and right now, have no other option apart from to agree what is in front of us right here and right now. Otherwise, in 5 days' time, rubbish is collecting at every door and every street in the Rangitikei. Now, unless I'm reading it wrong, what's been in place for the last 6 or 7 months?
Yeah, I'm going to make a rule in a little bit, but I'll let you answer that. Then I think I'll need to move the conversation on. Yes.
Yep. So first of all, the contract that ended in November is an awkward time for us. So it's not at the end of the financial year. It's not connected to anything of any meaningful time frame for us. So what we did with Smart is we negotiated with them to extend it until now. Obviously, it comes to the end of the financial year, so that makes a lot more sense. So what we've had with them is a monthly extension and extension. So they are happy to continue with it. What we said to them is, if you have to commit to another 2 years or until 30th of June 2022, what would that look like? So if we can't agree to any of this, I think they will still be open for, let's say, the next 3 months to pay what we are paying now, as long as we then move on. The challenge for us is not so much those negotiations. The challenge for us is the lack of an alternative in the district. So we might be 3 months down the line with no alternative service provider and have to negotiate with them again. That really is the challenge. So we've had a really good relationship with them. They've been very flexible in how we deal with them, and they are still quite flexible going forward. So it's not like the rubbish is going to build up at people's doors on Monday.
Further questions, Edward?
Yeah.
To suggest that there isn't an alternative, we've had 6 months to go and investigate that, have we not?
I think I'll cut in here. We're getting into an area where the chief executive has said, look, obviously this wasn't an ideal situation, and he authorised it. I think that if you're going to ask for a further explanation around that, it is the chief executive's decision, whether it was based on workload or whatever. That my guess is that you'd be asking for a report from staff around the process. This principally is put us in a place of what do we do from here, and I think we probably need to separate those two functions. I'm not trying to get rid of all arguments here, but I think there's a further conversation. Councillor Belsham.
So I guess in my speaking before, I actually raised the issue around the process and how we deal with tenders or contracts when they're closing. So that's my want, is to see what we do when these processes come around. Where was the failing, so that we can address it and actually make sure that it doesn't happen again. I guess. Do you understand? Do I put that into any sort of recommendation?
I think
because it is around process.
Yes, but I think we'll take that, as I said, to a second stage.
Right.
I think at the moment we need to deal with, first of all, where we currently are, and if we want to put some words around the process for checking, then that's fine. Councillor Gordon.
At the top of page 245, Your Worship, in the first paragraph, it says, in addition, Smart Environmental Limited need to invest in the contract to deliver the efficiencies they've requested. So, would any of the staff in the room be able to elaborate a little bit on what exactly they're intending to do and who really benefits?
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship. So, from what I can understand from the equipment that they've used on this contract has come all along, so there's quite a long period of time. If they have to commit to another 2 or 2.5 years, they would have to renew some of that equipment. And that's what that's for. So it's a fair position.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do now is deal with the recommendations as they fit. And whether somebody is okay with putting on the table the recommendation 3.2 that we agreed with direct negotiation procurement with Smart Environmental Limited for a 2-year extension to manage. The only question I've had there is, would it be possible to make it a 1-year extension if it's a direct negotiation rather than 2? And are there any merits around that position? So that's just a question before I'll put that on the table as a recommendation. As a recommendation. Okay. So the answer is they're not willing to entertain that discussion. All right, look, I will move 3.2 that we agree to a direct negotiation procurement with them. Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Gordon, you second.
Yep. Great.
I'll speak for it. In the ideal world, perhaps we have some systems to learn here, but the reality is we actually need provision of the service. And I need to deal with the there and now separately. So I am supporting that, 3.2. Any other speakers for motion? Right, I'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. 3.3 falls in there because effectively that negotiation has already occurred. So 3.3 follows that we approve the 2-year extension with an estimated annual value of 7,000, etc. To maintain continuous provision. I will so move. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Dunn is seconding. Moving 3.2 is the easy one because literally that says we can negotiate. This is the negotiation. This is where we sit. If there are some further possibilities of negotiating that now, we need to leave that to start.
We already have negotiated now.
Okay, thank you. Right, I have a mover and a seconder. Any other speakers? Right, I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carry. 3.4, that the mandatory vote transfer session be reviewed as required under Local Government Act 2002. That the review be completed to allow sufficient time for the agreed arrangements to be in place by 1st of July 2020. Is that the right year?
No.
Yeah. So can I have a correction, please? Yeah, thank you. I queried it and I forgot to note it in my report. This is separate to what Councillor Belsham is indicating. So I will so move. Looking for a seconder to it. Councillor Gordon was first. I don't think I said to speak for this further. I'll put it to vote unless there's one speaker. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. You effectively foreshadowed
Yes,
emotional
yes, I did. I put some words together, so I could read them out if there's any issue with the wording, we can fine tune it, but the recommendation would be that a report be provided to Assets and Infrastructure Committee on what council's processes are in dealing with contracts that are coming to an end and what policies are in place to deal with the continuation of the services that they provide. So hopefully that wording looks after the information that can be provided on that.
Yeah. Any comment on this?
Thank you. That is clear to me, and I'm happy to do that. I would have rejected it had you said continue to use the word failing and the word predicament. I don't believe those are appropriate, but you haven't, so I'm prepared to accept those.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Dalgety, I think you were. I'll go to you next, sorry. And you wish to speak further to it?
Oh, no, I think it's been taken on board with what we are requesting.
Yes, thank you. Right, I'll put the votes as soon as we have the words up there. Second was Councillor Dalgety, third was Councillor Carson. You could put support of it. to the vote? Those in favour? Those against? Carried. It is now 3 o'clock. Perhaps we could deal with, I think the next one is should be quite fast. Rubbish collection, item 15, rubbish collection in Taihape, attachment 9, pages 247 through to 249, and the report is attached. Would somebody like to move Councillor Carter the recommendation to receive? Thank you, Councillor Ash, seconded. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. So we're speaking to a motion. I'll move recommendation 2, having regard to the disruption, etc. Looking for a seconder to it. Thanks, Councillor Tracy Hidero. I'll speak very briefly to it because I think other councillors will elaborate. This is a company that has tried to dig us out of a hole in Taihape. They have taken on the collection of rubbish in Taihape because there was a need, because a lot of people could not use wheelie bins because of the hilly nature, etc. So that they provided a needed service. They started to do that, and the hope also that they build it into sustainable business in Taihape. COVID came around. The whole district was changed. A number of people dropped the service. They continued, as I understand it, to pick up rubbish that they weren't contracted to do so. So they're saying, hey, look, could you give us an extension time almost to be able to rebuild the business? So I'm supporting it. Looking for speakers, either for or against. Councillor Duncan.
I would like it amended just because 6 months takes us to December, which is when the proverbial hit the fan last year, because basically council closes down, nobody knows what's going on. And also, I totally agree with what you've said, Your Worship, but in that they have really tried to do a great job, and council has actually done a really good job supporting them with information online, and the map that Mrs. Gordon put together is really great. And really thank you so much for all that work that you've done. I would say that we either need to chop it back to 4 months or take it through until the end of February, because that Christmas time is madness.
Have you got a preference?
Well, yes, my preference would be that we take it longer.
The end of February.
Because
End of January.
end of January, end of February, I don't have a preference here, but not December.
I totally agree that probably that time frame isn't right, and I think then that review date's quite important. So I'm more than comfortable to go with January or February, whatever you decide. But I think the review, perhaps even then, if we were going to February, maybe make the review after 4 months, so they've had a bit more time to build up that business. So I'd be more than comfortable to talk to her on that basis.
Okay, so would you be prepared to move the amendment?
Yes, so I'd like to move an amendment to say that we should take the, continue underwriting plant to provide curbside rubbish for a further, so that takes us up to 8 months, does it? At a cost of per week, funded with a review after the first 4 months, please.
I'll second.
Seconding the amendment. I'll put the amendment. Anybody wish to speak to it, I'll put the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? But now becomes a substantive motion. Looking for speakers again back to the substantive motion with the amendments attached. Councillor Gordon.
Yes,
Councillor Hero, you wish to speak as well.
Your Worship, I fully support what has been said around this, around your comments previously. I think there's a bigger issue here, in that when we contract out any service to the market, we expect that the market will come and do the job, they will make a profit of some degree, and everyone will be happy. But I think with provision of this service, this is what I describe as market failure, in terms of no one can make a profit. And guess what? The buck stops with us. And so now we're stepping up to the plate, and it may cost more than what we previously got, but unless we do it, it ain't going to happen. And I think that's something we need to accept, that sometimes, the buck does stop with us. And it can be for any service that we provide. Sometimes we just have to get involved. So I'll leave it there. And I support the motion.
Certainly support the motion in the sentiments that have just been put forward by Councillor Gordon. And yeah, it's been just taking the last corridor that we've had about potentially rubbish being left on doorsteps. It would be good if we pick up and total this motion.
Can we just signal that we've got Councillor Duncan, Councillor Gordon, that they were supposed to receive an email. So, any other speakers? Look, in terms of right of reply, I think it's been said, I think we're all on the same page here. I take on board your comments. There's a huge number of councils, of course. It's something that council does, and that may well be something that could happen in the future in our district. But this is giving them a crack. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. And 3, recommendation 3, that council staff investigate whether it would be appropriate for rubbish bags to be sold. Do you wish to move? Seconded, Councillor Ash. Any discussion?
Can I make a comment about this one?
This
was my suggestion, and I also want to make sure that we're not stepping on toes with the supermarket and forestry, so I will be involved in the Taihape councillors in this, because one of the barriers that Leanne Abraham raised with me was the price of the rubbish bags from the supermarket, and I just saw that there's maybe a potential for us to assist with the cost, which would assist them with their business.
Okay.
So that's the context for it. Not that we want to get into selling rubbish bags, but if it's a way that actually continues a service to the Taihape community with bags, then I think that's something we should investigate.
Okay, I think I'll put it to the vote if you're happy to do so. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors will adjourn now, having been at it for a couple of hours. We're required to adjourn. Quarter of an hour. Administrative matters and financial snapshot will give you back where we're at. Having read through, just so you can think about this over the break, having read through, probably the area of contention will be around the discussion around the statute and the James Cook statute. And I'd like you to think, and I'll put it down formally later, as I see it, there are 4 options on the table. Option 1 being remove or destroy the James Cook statute. 2, to continue just to protect it. 3, to remove the protection and do nothing else. And 4, to remove the protection and remove the plaque that's associated with it. That's something that you may well be to think about before time for the discussion. So I think
you should just be concerned about your comment about remove and destroy. Remove is one thing, destroying is something completely separate. So remove and destroy or remove.
Yeah, I've just I only put in those terms because I'm not sure that it can be removed without damage.
One other question, Your Worship. I didn't hear relocation in those options. Is that one?
Sorry, yes, that could be another option as well. Right, we'll adjourn.
Sorry, are you able to clarify what the plaque says?
because its plaque is covered over at the moment, my memory of the plaque is that it lists Captain James Cook as the discoverer of New Zealand. Or words to that effect. Yes, so we're adjourning now for resuming live at how long? 15 minutes? 25 past 3, we'll go back on live. Thank you very much.